Shirt show. All right, let's go.
Shirt show! Talking shirt! Shirt show! That's talking shirt! Shirt show! Talking shirt! Shirt show! Shirt, man!
All right, episode 16 of Shirt Show. We're talking with Shannon from mile 6 in Australia. Let's go!
There it is.
Hey, dude, what's up?
Hey, how you going?
You good?
Yeah, go for it.
Ready to go?
Yeah.
All right. First of all, that shirt we got. Hand printing is not a crime.
Second of all, is the eat shit fuck you poster you have in the background.
You like it?
I do love it. Yeah.
That's from some guys over in the States called Real Friends of Print, and it's kind of like a bit of a shop motto, I guess.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah.
The hand printing is not a crime is like my take on skateboarding is not a crime.
Yeah.
And so Joel, our art director, put it together, and it's kind of like we hand print. So, which I know you guys, both of you guys, sort of don't do, or is it Andy? Is that how you started? I've watched a few of your podcasts. So.
Oh yeah. So I started on a manual and in a garage. Very familiar. I was one of those people that know manual printing before I knew auto printing, you know. And in fact, auto printing was really intimidating. I knew I wanted it. I always imagined, like, when I was manually printing, easier ways to do it. When I was on long runs, I thought to myself, well, how could I make it so that it's kind of an auto, or how can I make this easier? Yeah. Because back then inks were thicker and I was printing on hoodies and things like that. And it was destroying my wrist, you know? So, you know, I'm soft handy, right? You know that.
Yeah.
Right.
I was soft handy, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like, so I started on a manual, and we have a manual here. I think maybe even the same as Dylan, right?
Yeah. Sidewinder.
Sidewinder. Yeah. So we recently bought two more heads
cruisers.
for it. Two cruisers, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I like the press. We print on it. We generally only do like fixes. So if, let's say, there's a 3-color or something that had a hole in it, or there was a misprint, let's say, we'll order the fix in. Maybe it's 1 shirt or 2 shirts or whatever it is, and we'll set it up on the manual and print it so that it doesn't interfere with auto production. And also we print all of our transfers on it.
Cool.
For retagging, you know.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've never worked in a shop with an auto, so that's why we don't have one. And where kind of my story of how I got to be in a print shop, kind of, there's a place in London where I worked for 2 years called PhotoFit, Al and Pete, and they actually they had 3 manual machines. And they were doing hundreds and hundreds of T-shirts, but they just outsourced all their printing to this massive shop in the back of London somewhere that had like 7 or 8 Taz machines. So that's kind of like my mud map for the shop. But both my printer, Matt, my head printer, we call him the wizard. He's used them, but every kind of 6 months I'm like, should we? He's like, no, mate, no, it's soulless. But we do is, we just have the 2. If we have a big job, we'll set both manuals up with the same job, and then we just tag team. So
Right. Do you feel like you have the work for an auto, or is it more because you think about it because you want to do quality of life for the printers?
We definitely have situations or stages when we have the work. One of our biggest clients is a beer company called Young Henry's, and we might get, for one design, 700 or 800 Ts of the same design. And we could definitely put that on an auto. I don't like outsourcing any of that sort of stuff because it's one of my biggest clients. So I'd have an issue if my client found out and then went to that company. Right. I definitely like the idea of an auto. If I was ever to do it, it would be a striker, you know, those oval things.
The ovals, yeah.
I like those because you can open them up and put more heads in.
Yeah.
I kind of like, they look a bit funny too. So I kind of like when they hit the corner and they just sort of flick around. Like.
we used to have an oval a long time ago. That was like the first auto we ever had. Yeah. It was a precision oval, and that thing was fucking dangerous.
Oh, really?
It had like no safety features on it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, I've been hit probably 10 times by by the auto.
Yeah.
And I would say, but on the ends, when it does flip around, it goes super fast, like twice as fast as it seems like anyway. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it goes.
It's not even, fast. It wasn't even the problem with us because it had these metal guards on it to where like you couldn't kind of bump into it or run into it. But the biggest thing was like, all the heads came down at once, like all the print heads. It was like the whole side just came down and printed, like whatever screen was in would print, but it had no like stopping if something was in the way. So like, I think Brian was like in it doing something and Kyle didn't see him in there and like turned it on and it like came down and he was like, luckily he got out of the way, but it was like one of those like rough days at work where, they thought they were going to kill each other because, he almost got crushed in the machine.
Yeah.
But they're definitely cool. Like that thing was like super old antique when we got it. But the strikers are nice, like you said, because like if you ever want to go bigger or do anything different, you can always add to it.
Yeah. I think I had this idea that if it was big enough, you could put 2 jobs, like one on either side. So you could, you can also go a bit faster.
Yeah.
The idea of having an auto is definitely appeals. And I think it was something you said, Andy, where everything prints at once. So it's like, it's heaps quicker. But the other problem, or not a problem, the point that I have is it's like, for us to work, the amount of work that we need to then feed an auto triples. So that would sort of take me from, I'd just be constantly, I feel like I'd be in a point where I'm constantly trying to like negotiate on price and getting cheaper and cheaper to try and to bring the work in because the volume that you can put on them is bigger. So I don't know. I think when Matt says to me, hey man, like my wrists are fucked. So like we need an auto.
A couple things. I think the striker is it's made for two things. One of them, what you said, is the expandability. You can add in a section. But the other thing was its design is meant for skinnier spaces. Like long, narrow buildings, let's say, because like what we have is it's a circle basically, and it takes up more space. But I think going like the transition, or as far as soulless goes, I was trying to think when you said,
please don't take offense to that. I don't. Because I know
I agree with you to an extent. I completely get it. Like that print you made, like you used your arms and you pulled the squeegee. You save yourself. However, for running an auto, there's also something to that. There's something to be said for kind of being, figuring out that machine, because there's all the variables are still there. You still have to flash, you still have to watch your pressure and your squeegee speed and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's the thing too, that's like artistic about it, is that you, the printer, need to know like what mesh you're going to use or what angle you're going to use or what kind of ink or what you're going to add to it. And all those things are still there. Like it's still a very personal thing. It's just, you're actually not pulling the squeegee. Like you're setting it up, you're putting all the switches, you're doing everything you got to do. It's just the physical labor of pulling the squeegee is gone. So everything else is still there for the most part. It's just,
I've just never used one. And I think that's part of the problem. There's the M&R distributor here, which is called Rawtech. He has a trade night sort of once a year. And it's at this massive big shop called T1, which is kind of one of the companies that we outsource to. And her shop is probably close to comparable to both of yours. Her name's Pam Manel. And it's an amazing space. And every time I go in there, I'm like, whoa. She's got everything. She's got the Unicode. She's got one of the very first the director screen things.
M-Links.
M-Links, yeah. She's got one of the very first. In fact, I think she was probably one of the first shops over here that had it. She's got the Eco Tech, all of it, And every time I go in there, I kind of get I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. But I literally have only ever stood at a machine once and loaded the shirts on. And it nearly took my arm off. It was so fast. And Glenn, their operator, was like, dude, we haven't even turned it on. It's still warming up. And I was like, holy crap, man. It freaked me out. So
there's definitely something robotic about only loading. If that's all you're doing is loading, then I hear you, but as far as setting up the job and making it run, there's definitely some soul to that.
Oh, yeah. And from my perspective, I don't really print much anymore. And that's where Matt and Ben, the two guys that do all the printing, they, I'm sure that, they love the intricacies and the angles and the pressures and all that sort of stuff. So, if I gave them that to play with, I'm sure they would, they would have as much fun with it. But yeah, I think the other thing is just for me, it's a space. We don't have a huge amount of space. We're in 169 square meters. I don't know what that.
We tried to do the math on this once before.
We're not even going to try.
It got really ugly.
Yeah. Well, basically, we're the width of two cruisers side by side, a little bit of room. We don't have one big oven. When I replaced my ovens, I got two mini ovens.
Why? Tell us about that. Why are there two? Dylan was mentioning that earlier.
We did it because we did it for a couple of reasons. The cost was the same to get the two little ones versus the Radicure, I think it's called, the next one. I don't know the names. But one of the main reasons we did it was if we're doing white T-shirts on one carousel and black on the other, so we can each operator
change the belt speed.
Yeah, each printer's got his own thing. And then the other thing was like, I've been trying to move our shop for like nearly 3 years, and we did it so that when we move, we have a lot more flexibility with trying to set up the shop. So instead of having, like traditionally most shops, I guess, have the oven sort of as a runway through the middle, we have a little bit more flexibility. And, like let's say we did decide to put an auto in, we could, put an auto here and then put the two little carousels on the side, and they could all sort of run into like a center point. And that was Matt, the wizard. That was his suggestion. And, it's worked really good. We turn them on and off really all the time. I'm a bit of a powered, I'm pretty keen to make sure that we have the power on and off. So, so if Ben's not printing, his oven's not on, or we turn them off at lunchtime and all that sort of stuff. So, and so far it's worked out. I don't like the power bill. For us, it's about $45 a day. So I don't know if that's something or not,
Yeah, that's something that I've always kind of wondered about. And like, we just keep ours on all like 8 hours that we're here.
Yeah.
Do you leave yours on no matter what too all day long, or do you shut it off?
Ours are on all day. But I would say that that strategy, we had two, heat waves, but, so we used to have two heat waves. That's how we ran. We had, one auto and then a heat wave for that. And when we expanded, the way our shop had to expand, when we added our second auto, we just added another heat wave. Heat wave is just like, it was their smallest gas, M&R's smallest gas dryer. And so we did something similar. So we ran two dryers for a while, but it turned out that, and for that reason too, because isn't that awesome that you can run, like you said, different shirt materials, down through different ovens. And so we have that now. With one oven, we got the split belt.
The plan now is around August next year to move, hopefully. Who knows what happens with the COVID space. So, if I need to upgrade the belt, the oven to do that, then, it's totally like, I don't have a problem with doing it. But
Dylan, are you getting a bunch of texts up there?
That's me.
Is that you?
Yeah, sorry. It's like 8:30 here, 9 a.m.
Yeah, you're in the future, right?
I'm at work. Well, you guys are at work, but like Joel is over here and the guys are all in out. I'm like, no gurneying today. So, yeah.
So how did you end up with the name Aisle 6?
Good question. My very first job was, I finished school. I left college when I was 17 before the year finished, and I went and worked at a supermarket, and I always had this sort of, ended up being like a shop boy, I could stack the shelves.
Yeah.
And I was born on the 6th of March. So I kind of had this dream that aisle 6 was the aisle that you go to, that everything was cool. And if you couldn't find it, it was in aisle 6 and it was special. And originally aisle 6 was a clothing, I did it as a clothing label. I never, I wanted to print, but I wanted it to be a T-shirt label. And so aisle 6 was just like, if you go, it's in aisle 6. That's where it is. The spelling is just whack. I love it, but I hate it because I have to explain to almost every person, because we have the 6 where the S would be.
Oh yeah.
But what happened was, I had aisle6.com as a domain name, and then I let it lapse, and someone swooped in and got it. I don't know what it's for now. So I had to change the name to the way it's spelt. And, from Google Words or search engine, it's really bad. But I kind of look at it now as if people can find us, then, you know, they've taken a little bit of time. Well, that's what I tell myself.
My first job was also at a supermarket. Me too. Yours too, really? No shit. Yeah, I worked.
I really liked it.
Minimum wage, and we. My job there was to just bag groceries and then take them out to the customer's car. Like you couldn't take your own groceries out, and so we pushed the cart out to the car and loaded up the car for them. And sometimes they'd try and give you a tip, and you were not allowed to take a tip.
Just the tip.
Just the tip.
But I did sometimes. But hardly
just
ever.
A tip. Right.
Shut up.
Just a little bit.
But I was like you though, like I would prefer to stock shelves and stuff like that. And like you were saying, to keep an aisle tidy was to, like, we called it facing, where you would pull all the cans to the front and make the aisle look like super nice. Yeah. I always took the shittiest aisle, like for everybody else, which was cans, because I could work my whole shift in that aisle and not have to do anything else. I just could like zone out, and all I have to do is pull cans forward. Yeah. And that was like, I love that. I mean, I was like in high school, so it was like, you know, you just want to get through the day to go to the party at night. So fuck it, just like pull cans forward.
I loved it. And, you know, you'd hear like mop and bucket in aisle 6 or whatever it was, and that shit used to, you know, that used to get me excited.
Pretend you didn't hear it.
Yeah, no. Or sometimes it could be anything. It could be puke. It could be, you know, usually it was like a glass jar of spaghetti sauce that some kids knocked off. That used to
be like us at work though. Like we would play tricks on like other employees. We would like take an egg and like half crack it and hide it in places like heating vents and stuff, so that when it got rotten, it would fucking smell.
Yeah, wow.
Or like crack open chocolate milk and like leave it under the stairs for a while, and then make the new kid tell him like in order to be part of the club, he has to drink it.
Yeah.
The good stuff, you know.
I played in April. One of my jobs was I had to count the trolleys every morning, and the manager was like, "Oh, you need to go to the far car park," and like she sent me like to the furthest possible place to pick up a trolley, and then there was no trolley there. So I was like, this is not nice.
I think one of my favorite times at the supermarket was when like LED bulbs first came out, and they wanted to change all the lights in the supermarket to LEDs. And we were taking down all those like cancer fucking, what are they, like CFLs or whatever. And we just played Star Wars basically out by the dumpster for like a week, just smashing them against each other and like sword fighting with them.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I like it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I like, that's a sweet way to come up with a name. It wasn't like, you know, handpullscreenprinting.com or something. It was actually had some meaning behind it.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing behind it was originally as the clothing label. I'd be at a party and my friends would say something stupid like, you know, home theater is an oxymoron, and I'd write that down in my book, and then I'd make them a t-shirt, you know, and that's kind of how it all sort of started. And then I had no idea on how to screen print. I'm not trade qualified. I'm not sure if it's a trade over in the States, but over here it is. And
I wish it was. That'd be cool. I'd love to have that certification.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
you want to make that up, Andy? We'll just make people get certified now.
Yeah. And so when I grew up in Canberra, and when I moved to Sydney, I found a TAFE course, which is like night school. And I did that every year for 4 years on a Monday night. And every semester or the end of every term, I'd say to the teacher, "Oh, can you please fail me?" Because then I could go back and I could keep printing. And you used to see me, I'd walk in, I had this little Volkswagen Beetle, and I'd in the back, I'd have all my screens, and then I'd have all these box of t-shirts, and I'd just literally go in and just would print away trying to figure it all out. And then, that's kind of how it sort of came about. And a buddy of mine, Sim, bought me this, I don't even know what you'd call it now, probably a boat anchor. But it bought me this carousel from this supplier, and it was $700. I was like, I couldn't even grasp that much money. But he kind of knew that he could tell that it was something that I gave a shit about, essentially. And so I'd make the screens and go home, and I lived in this share house, and my carousel was kind of tucked away in the corner, and my flatmates would go out, and every time they'd go out, I'd pull the carousel out and have my heat gun and my water-based ink, and I'd try and, you know, print some shirts. And then that's kind of how it all sort of started.
So did you start with water-based then?
Yeah, I didn't know any different. there's an Australian brand here called Permaset. You guys can probably get it over there, but I had no idea. Like I had no idea about any of it. Plastisoling, I didn't even know the difference. So
you just learned on it. That's what you knew.
Yeah. The TAFE course kind of got me the foundations, like making screens, coding screens. But the real sort of when I kind of actually learnt what I know now was when I went to London and worked at the shop PhotoFit. And I walked in there thinking, I entered an ad in like one of the was like the backpacker magazines called TNT, and I was like, we're looking for a screen printer, and I thought I knew my shit, and I actually had never printed anything on anything other than a single head carousel. And I walked in there, and Al, this Kiwi guy, he was like, right, set this job up, and I was so nervous and I misprinted it, and he goes, you can't print. So I was like, no, you're right, I can't. But I ended up, I stayed there for 2 years, and I cleaned screens, and I would sew the labels in, and anything that they wanted, I did it. I was like, they're like, do you have your license? I was like, yeah, I have my license. So I'd drive the shop van, and I'd drive all around, outside of London. I'd do deliveries. I'd stitch the labels in on the shirts. I did anything. I didn't care. And
that's awesome.
So why London? How did you end up going to London?
I was sort of 31 and I knew I needed to travel. And London was kind of like, it was a place that I really desperately wanted to go to. So I left I was actually a customs officer at the time. I worked, when you come back overseas, if you had stuff that you were moving home and you bought you'd bring your backpack back, but then you'd have to send all your other stuff back. I worked in the section called personal effects and private assessment, and you'd bring your shipping notice in from the courier company, and I'd help you clear that stuff for customs, and if you had to pay duty or GST. And then I helped people like first-time importers, so people importing cars, or the weirdest thing was bull semen. This guy was importing bull semen for his for his cattle ranch, and so I was doing that, and I took 12 months leave without pay, and I went over to London and managed to get this job at PhotoFit, and that was all I wanted to do. I just wanted to work in a print shop.
How long were you there?
2 years. I had a visa for 2 years, and I stayed there until I probably needed to come home. I was drinking a lot and partying a lot. And so, but PhotoFit kind of was like an apprenticeship for me. It taught me, it's kind of the foundation or the mud map for the shop. Like Stevie, he was their head printer. So when I kind of set this place up, I've got Matt, the wizard, and then they had Rob, who was their art director. So then, we've got Joel who's sitting over here. He's kind of our art director, and had another printer, which was James, who's my other printer, Ben, and kind of I kind of knew how to set the shop up, and
right.
To go back to the. Sorry, Andy.
From day one, you had employees, and it wasn't just you?
No. Oh, no. It was me, a heat gun, and that shitty little Anchor carousel. And when I came back, I lived in Canberra for a while, trying to sort of recover from being in London. And then I saved up enough money, and I moved to Melbourne, and I lived down in Melbourne for 18 months. And I was working in a print shop down there called Screenplay. And Andy's shop was amazing. He had 2 8-color machines, and kind of gave me a bit more motivation to get my own shop. But my girlfriend, who I met in Melbourne, she lived in Sydney. And this is a bit of a long story, but she won a cruise. She won a cruise to go and sail the Greek islands, and her best friend couldn't go and her mum couldn't go. But I was a boyfriend. She's like, do you want to come? I'm like, you can come with me. And I was like, I'll come with you. But the only sort of deal is that when we come back, I'll come and live with you in Sydney. So after the trip to Greece, I moved back up to Sydney, which is where I was living before I went to London. And this is where I started the shop. There's a government scheme here called NICE, and you basically get your unemployment benefits for 12 months, but you can start a small business. So that's how I started the shop. And I had that Anchor carousel, which I just left at mates' places, and a heat gun from a hardware store. And I used to make my screens in this vacuum bag. I had a vacuum, and you get a vacuum bag from like a $2 shop, and you suck the air out. I used to have super
punk rock way of doing it.
Yeah, lubricant spray. So you'd wet the paper, and you'd spray that. And then I had the vacuum in my my G-Shock watch. It was like exposure time was like 8 or 9 minutes. So that's how I used to make my screens. And that's how it was with me for 2 years in my first place, and then I moved in here.
So you said there was a government scheme. So there was a way you could get your benefits for a year. So it's sort of like a grant or something.
Yeah,
is that what you mean? Like a
So you get your unemployment benefits, and then and instead of to get the unemployment benefits every fortnight, you have to go and apply for a job. To do this scheme, you go and you do a 10-week small business course. And then at the end of that 10 weeks, you've written a business plan, which is then what you're then supposed to put into action. And every fortnight, instead of getting the dole money, you'd get your niece money, and you could use that for whatever you wanted. And you could make the business, you could bring in as much money as you want, and it didn't affect how much.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
Isn't
it's
that
been
cool?
around for a really long time. It's actually been around I know so many people that have done it.
That's super smart though, because it gets people off their ass.
Yeah.
And incentivizes, starting a business. It says,
I don't have that shit.
It got me, it gave me the foundations to sort of set up the shop and, set up how I was going to operate. Fortunately, I was sharing a space with 2 other dudes, Andy and Alex, and they were artists. So I had my little carousel on my desk. I could literally, where the carousel was, I could touch my desk, and the place had 2 toilets. So I took one toilet, and I used to have this plastic tub, which I sat on the toilet, and I'd cut a hole in the bottom, and that was how I washed out my screens. And it was
a toilet.
Very, yeah. So the water would go into the toilet. So it was very.
I feel like in America we would say we're starting a business and get unemployment, and then I don't know what would you do with the money? I have a feeling that people would take advantage of that. But but also it's so fantastic. Like I would have definitely done that. It would have really helped. My first year was our first 3 years was a struggle, man. I mean, we put too much on credit card. And because at first here in America, you can open a credit card and you can get 6 months like interest free, payment free, this kind of thing. Yeah. But all of a sudden that turns into high payments, and and also that destroys your credit. So you can't go get a loan to pay off your credit cards. So it was it's kind of an endless.
I basically just took everything I had that I could sell, and I sold it, and I took that money and bought like a press and dryer, and then I just fucking hustled so hard to like get sales in, and then I basically just ate ramen for.
Same here. What year? What point for you anyway did it start to turn enough where like it wasn't check to check? You know what I mean? Like you had everything paid for, all your bills. At what point for you?
For me?
Yeah, for you.
Well, I mean, when I moved into this space, that was kind of like I was like, all right, this is a bit more real. And I'm still like, funnily enough, off the back of COVID, I had to shut down for 4 weeks. And we've been, I don't know if you know what our government's been giving us, but there's an amazing, it's actually pretty special. It's called JobKeeper. So I started in April, and the first round finishes at the end of September. So basically any full-time employee that you've had on the books for over a year or part-time employee, the government's giving you $750 towards their wages.
Per what, week or for what?
Per week.
Wow.
So it's epic, essentially. And you've also had any income tax you've had to pay, which is the tax you collect that you have to pay on behalf of that staff member. They're basically giving you that back for free, so you don't have to pay income tax. So it's been a pretty, as bad as COVID's been, like now I don't owe anyone anything because of how I've been able to pay all my accounts back. And I only ever
Andy, how do we move our shops to Australia?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's really, really good for, here in America, there is a PPP. That's one of the things you could have gotten anyway. And that's a payroll protection program. Yeah. And so that covered for a certain amount of time. And they changed that along the way to longer, they extended it. Yeah. But for a certain amount of time that covers payroll. And the thing about that though is that that any forgiven amount of that loan. So right now it's still just a loan for our shop. We haven't been forgiven any of it. We took the PPE and we haven't been forgiven it yet. And any amount though that's forgiven is considered income.
Oh,
so
wow.
you pay taxes on that amount. And so essentially what's going to happen is it's going to cost.
Yeah.
Like there's no benefit to the business owner. So it did work in that it kept people off unemployment. But to the business, to the small business anyway, it erased all benefit by the fact that it's just you have to pay taxes on it.
Yeah. When that's $750, the government takes its tax that you would have to pay as the staff member. So they get like $654 after tax. If, say, for example, that covers might cover 2.5 days of wages, I then, as the business owner, would pay the difference to top up the staff member's salary. So, but if you're, say, for example, if you're only working 2 days, and you would normally get like $450, irrespective of that, I have to still pay you the $654 that the government's paying me. So for some instances, for one of the staff guys, it's okay. But it's just that benefit. Like it's been going for 6 months. They've announced round 2 and they're reducing the amount, and hopefully we qualify again. And that'll take us to the end of January. But yeah, it's been a pretty special thing. So to answer your question, like now is the first time I've ever been like debt free. I don't owe any money for the equipment or anything like that. I've always tried really hard to, like you talk about the experience with getting the credit card when you first open. I've had some pretty major experiences with credit card and credit debt, and to the point where I don't ever want it. I'm really anti-credit. And Dylan, you talk about at the end of every day or what week you buy all your stock and all that sort of stuff like that. That's what I do as well. Like as soon as I changed my terms of trade when we came back from COVID to be 100% up front. We used to be 50% and then 50%.
We've been doing that for a really long time as far as the 100%.
That's a game changer. Hey, that has been absolutely the best, because I'm like, holy, I've got money now and the money's already in my bank. So it just gives me that ability to just like pay everything straight up,
What if it's for somebody that works off of purchase orders though, and they don't pay for 60 days? I mean, that's just their terms.
Yeah.
I make exceptions really for purchase orders, or
I don't really get many purchase orders. I've got one account, which is, I'm still letting them be 50% up front and 50%, once it's finished. That's my biggest client. Like I'm okay with them, we've done over 100 designs for those guys. So I'm more than happy to cover that one.
I just feel like it depends on what niche you're in. You know what I mean? If you're doing a ton of like POs, then you're probably dealing with like schools and, big business stuff. But yeah, I feel like it's the same way with us. Like we'll only do it if it's somebody where I know I can fucking hunt them down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you don't want to give it to a random dude and then you never hear from him again.
No, when I first started, because back in like 8 or 9 years ago, it was like 30-day terms. That was kind of what it was. And someone would say, I'd send a quote and they'd approve the quote and I'd be like, cool, I'll go and buy the shirts. And then I won't hear from them. And I'm like, I had no money, So I've spent money on these T-shirts for this dude and I've never heard, they've ghosted me essentially. So then the biggest change for me was 50% up front. Once I did that kind of gave me the cash flow. And obviously COVID's now why we do 100%. So any new client, I'm okay. If they don't want to pay, I'm like, you know what? That's cool. We're not your print shop. There's a lot of print shops, If you don't want to do business with us, I'm okay with it. So, it's good. It's a good thing. I'm trying to, I'm at the point with Profit First. I've listened to the audio book to the point where he's like, do your self-assessment. And I've read the audio book and I'm like, I just got to get time to do the self-assessment. And
no, I'm pretty much the same with you. I did the whole profit first thing as far as just like reading it, because I wanted it. To me, it resonated because the same thing. Like, I used to be like, I didn't ever really had a problem with money. I just was never like great with money. I'd be like that, I see something shiny and I was like, oh, I can get that. And then you end up like dipping into shit you shouldn't. But that, like, reading Profit First, I didn't necessarily use their methods. I was just more like, just the whole, like, pay for everything up front, get it gone. And then everything you have left over is basically like yours to use.
Yeah.
So for me, that was the biggest thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely a game changer for us is that, going to 100%. And, as I said, if my clients don't want to pay me, I'm okay. We're not your print shop,
Yeah.
We're not going anywhere. We're not going to take your money and buy a Ferrari, because it's not possible. So.
Yeah. Well, I saw on Instagram a little while ago. Did you guys partner with Gildan on like a design?
Yeah. So one of the foundation of what we do, and it kind of comes from working for PhotoFit, I was like trying to always do really cool artist collaborations and working with the really amazing artists. That's kind of the first clients that I ever had. And so there's a guy that we print for. His name's Cindy Sin. He's an amazing artist. He's a really cool dude. And we probably print one of his designs a week from the different people he does artwork for. Right. And so Gildan's, you guys have AS Color. I'm sure you're kind of getting a bit of AS Color. Mm-hmm. AS Color, that's our main t-shirt. That's what we use here. So Gildan was doing really well, and then AS Color kind of came along and swooped in. And so I think Gildan's now realized that they kind of need to, or they've been doing all these cool artist collaborations. So that was what that was. It was like, we printed it here in the shop with Cindy's artwork, and then they did a really cool online competition. And it was really, I really like doing it. Main reason majority of our clients ask for AS Color. So that's kind of why we print a lot of AS Color t-shirts. But
I've heard a lot of good things about AS Color. A guy called me and sent a sample pack. And but I don't remember there being any blends in there. It seemed like it was all cotton.
Pretty much, yeah.
Are there blends? And also, how does that print? How do their shirts print?
We don't really print many blends here. The main t-shirt we print is the staple, which is that's their sort of entry-level tee. We love it. We print, last year we did like 26,000 sort of that t-shirt, lots of black. We don't really have a problem with it. They've had a couple of issues recently with supply, but I think you guys have probably had that as well.
Right.
But we print so many of those t-shirts. And like I said, they don't really do many blends. They do lots of sort of stripy shirts, like the Where's Wally, red and white and black and white. And they've got this big fat banding one coming out. And,
I was really impressed with their website and the stuff that they carried, like the hats and the bags and all that stuff. Like that, that to me was really cool as far as shit that they have that it's not normal.
Why do you find, why don't you print blends? Was there something about your...
No one really asks for them, to be honest. I don't really promote them, and I don't know. We don't do many.
Are you discharging or something too?
Cotton doesn't shrink in Australia.
What's that, sorry? Cotton? No, we're pretty much exclusively plastisol. That's pretty much our thing. I did this morning, when it gets hot in our shop, it gets to about 104 Fahrenheit, I think, which is 40 degrees here. And we're in a tin shed. So, to be able to walk away from the machine when it's too hot or whatever, that's pretty much why we use plastisol. And again, it also goes back to PhotoFit. Like, that's what they use. That's kind of what I've always used. I'd really like to start using the Magna hybrid. That's out of the UK. It's like a hybrid water-based thing. But we also don't really have access to many blends. We don't get, there's one distributor for Bella Canvas here. And to get that, you have to, it's like so expensive. It's really expensive. And they don't hold the stock here. So a bunch of the distributors, instead of holding the stock in Australia, you basically pay for it and then they order it in, which is fine. But, it adds, $3 or $4 to the
you need to call up some of your buds from the customs office and
a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get them in with all that bull semen.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I love about AS Color over here is they have retail stores. So I can, if a client's like, hey, what's that t-shirt look like? I'm like, just go to the retail store. Just go and have a look. They've got the full range in there. You can have a look. You can try the color, and I think that's been a really big thing for AS Color.
It's made in Australia?
No, it's a New Zealand company, but they manufacture in Bangladesh and China and all those sort of places. But when they first landed in Australia, they were distributing AAA, the 1301, the all-style apparel t-shirt. They were a distributor for that, so you could get that from them, and then they had like 2 or 3 t-shirts.
Now Gildan owns them.
Yeah, and now they gradually got rid of AAA, and then they only have their own t-shirts. So, but the Gildan's big, massive over here. Like, that obviously same for you guys.
Yeah,
have like Gildan 7 labels.
Are they? And so AS Color, is that priced similar, like competitive to Gildan, or is it more?
They're kind of from my account perspective, they're about the same. Gildan has that volume discount, which helps us. But they're kind of pretty much the same. But we have a lot of people specifically asking for AS Color, so that's kind of why we.
I've been trying it out too. I think me and Andy got a sample pack around the same time, but I took it home, washed it. I got everything in my size, and I really like it. I mean, to me, the biggest thing with any shirt when I get it is like the sleeves and the neck, especially for me. I really hate like a really loose neck shirt, and AS Color is like nice and tight on the neck. So for me, that was really important, and it was just like had a good feel to it. So I'm excited to try it. The problem is for me is that it's in California, like their distros in California. So anytime I want to sell it, I have to wait like 5 days to get it. Which isn't a big deal, but it's just kind of like, most of the time I'm ordering stuff from one of our wholesalers and I get it the next day. So to wait 5 days is just kind of like, it is what it is.
There's a couple other, and AS Color know what I'm about to say because I say it to them all the time. You can't get a tear out tag in their t-shirt. They're working on it. So if you need to take the tag out, you have to get it unstitched and then sewn back up. And for me, it costs money to do that. And they don't make an extra small in the staple tee, which is the main t-shirt we print. So you have to get like their organic staple tee, and that's kind of frustrating as well. So, I came over to ISS 2 years ago, and I was just blown away by what you guys have access to. There's so much more.
You went to Long Beach?
Yeah. Not last year, the year before. And it was like my Disneyland. And, and I was just, next level, is it? Went up to the Bella Canvas stand. I was like, do you guys distribute in Australia? And she was like, the girl was kind of like, where's Australia? I was like, you don't need to, they don't need to, you guys don't need to worry about us over here, but like the Bella Canvas and Next Level, that's kind of, if they came over here and did it properly, that would be a bit of a shake up for who we are, and the t-shirt labels, but even just the equipment, like the workhorse and all that sort of stuff. It was just amazing. I was blown away. I can't wait to get back. I'm trying to figure out how. Obviously you can't go now, but trying to figure out, because I'll probably have to bring my family, and like I'll go over first and go to this, and then I'll meet you guys at Disneyland.
All right, sounds good.
Was that your first time in America?
Yeah. No, not the first time in America. The first time to that event. I've been to a couple of times. Had my honeymoon at Coachella, so which I really liked. And then prior to that, my wife Shaq and I, we'd been to New York for a couple of weeks. I actually looked up your shop, Dylan. I was like, I'm going to go to check out your shop, and I was like, it's not in New York. So I couldn't convince my wife Shaq, my wife now. I couldn't convince her. Hey, let's go up and check out this print shop.
Let's drive 3 hours north.
Yeah. She was like, no, I don't need to go and look at a screen print shop. So.
But the thing is you could have drove up here and you would have been in the mountains, and it's, good food and.
Yeah. Sites. I don't know what your partners are like when you start talking about screen printing to other screen printers and they're not interested.
Yeah.
It's like, there's kind of like that glazing. She's like, oh, you're talking about screen printing again. Ah, amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, Shaq's like, to go back, Shaq's the main reason that I have the shop, because even though I was on Nice, she was working this amazing job. She was working in TV and for a Fox Studios company, actually. And she was supporting us, or me, while I was working in the shop. But a couple of the biggest jobs I got was Channel V, which is kind of like an MTV over here. She was the production manager. So she stopped getting the T-shirts being printed by the company that was doing it, and she sent the business to me. So they were kind of like my first real jobs, and I would get the order for 100 T-shirts with my heat gun and my one head, and I'd spend a day printing these T-shirts, and I'd get the money, and that's when I upgraded all the equipment and started buying bigger, like a 4-head, 4-station carousel, which was I thought I'd won the lottery.
Isn't that an amazing feeling when friends of friends or people that you became friends with, and then they end up getting like a really good job or something in industry they send you an awesome job, or they just send you work that's just like, yeah, it's just that relieving feeling of like, I didn't have to do anything for this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you just got sent like a really good job by a friend just because they love you and trust you. It's just like,
Happened just 2 weeks ago. Good buddy of mine works for Honda, and he needed some polos. And so it's for embroidery, not screen printing.
Yeah.
And turns out now we're doing Honda,
Amazing.
So a lot. And it's like, just works that way sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that word of mouth. For us, the word of mouth is, it's hard to find us, the spelling and all that stuff I was talking about. But the word of mouth and the referral and that, the customer service, I've listened to both you guys talk, and, you have that ingrained in both your companies, that it's the customer service that's what gets the people coming back. And from my perspective, that's, I feel like that's my strongest point. I'm definitely not the best printer, not compared to what these guys can do. And so, wherever possible, if I can provide, customer service, it's kind of like that under promise, over deliver thing. You're just trying to wherever possible, if I can do it, I'll absolutely do it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It gets me in a lot of trouble because I take on work for people that I want to just do work for and try and help them out. And then, it just puts a pressure point in the shop because we don't have the capacity to do like 100 Ts quickly. It's like, it takes a little bit longer to get it into the pipeline. So,
that friend thing works both ways too, because I've had great accounts that I've lost because somebody leaves and then their friend, does screen printing. And so it goes to the friend. So it works both ways, but it's better when it works my way.
Yeah.
You mentioned you have that promo video, and it kind of something resonated with me, is that you mentioned that things kind of went hard into faster, quicker, cheaper. And now it's like coming back around to being more like customer service and stuff like that. And it's just funny you were talking about that, because I feel like I've talked about this quite a bit, where it's kind of like everybody's concerned with like the Amazons and like all these other things and like big business taking over. And it's kind of like, if you focus on the customer service and just like taking care of people, there's always going to be those artists that want to work with you rather than going to like a big box kind of thing. So it's pretty awesome to have that mindset.
Yeah. I think that one of our hashtags is always handprint. And I think that's now the point of difference that we have, because there was a couple of shops that we were all handprint shops, and we're all sort of, doing the same thing and, doing all this sort of stuff. Those shops have now upgraded and they've all got autos. So they've kind of pushed themselves up into that place where they have to maybe are competing for jobs. And we're definitely not the cheapest shop. And I think the point of difference we have now is that we are a bigger shop that can produce, I think the stuff that we do is fantastic, and that handprint is that little point of difference. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It takes us a little bit longer or a little bit more expensive, but the product at the end, it's worth it. And I think that's kind of that, that's now the sort of point of difference. And I think, everyone can have the same gear. And I always think about, if give everyone a guitar, everyone's going to play it differently, and
exactly.
That's where you guys, you guys are, you're in the same market, but you're in different spaces and you have the same equipment, but you're producing completely different things, know. And
there's just a million variables.
Oh, hundreds. Yeah. So many. And that's where our, our point of difference is with the hand printing of the tees. And don't get me wrong, I like the idea of sort of making money. Like it's not something that I don't dislike, but I think there's just different versions of it, and yeah.
I think for us, the whole going auto thing was just more of a stress relief or a quality of life for the employees, because it gets to the point where your word of mouth is good and your customer service is good, but then you end up getting so much work that if you don't go auto or you don't get other efficiencies in, you're going to work till midnight every single night. If you keep taking on the jobs and keep taking work, you're just going to end up working later and later, and your people are going to get burnt out. Yeah. So for us, it was we have to get an auto. We ended up with 4 manuals at one point and a few dryers before we got an auto. And then it was we were working till 9 o'clock at night every night.
But if you're,
and it was if you get an auto, it's okay, cool. Now we can work, more efficiently, and we're done by 4:30, 5 o'clock every day. Until you get to the point where you're doing more and more now, and then you're shit, now I need another auto.
That's exactly what happened to us.
And that's the same thing. It's we worked that auto until again we were working 9, 10 o'clock at night, or working on weekends to keep up, and then it's all right, you need another auto now. So it's not necessarily we went auto to be let's do this faster so we can make more profit. It's let's do it to where we can do everything is coming in fast and efficiently and quality still.
Did you hear that?
What was that?
Oh, it's Ben is asking me, how's the podcast going? I'm dude, I'm right in the middle of it. All of that. I'd take all of that. And it's just for me, I just got to get over it. I think I just literally need to get over it.
I'll tell you what, on a lunch break, just swing by and come run one of our autos with us and see what you think.
I would love it. I think I would actually really like it because it's mesmerizing, the whole up and down. We did a job. There's a guy that we print for. His name's Scott Marsh. He's an amazing Australian artist, and he did this mural, and it was the Prime Minister. I don't know if you know much about our Prime Minister.
I was gonna ask you about this, the Merry Crisis thing.
Yeah. Holy moly, that effed me up.
So tell me that whole story. What happened?
Well, he painted this mural, and when all the wildfires or bushfires was happening in January, the Prime Minister went to Hawaii for a holiday, right in the middle of it. And, everything was burning. It was the biggest fire that Australia had ever seen. And so Scott's amazing. He's got this amazing skill to take a topic and turn it into something political. And so he painted this mural of, sorry, there's a courier. Hang on, mate. Oh, it's in the corner underneath that box. Yeah, sorry. So he painted this mural of the Prime Minister in a Hawaiian shirt holding a daiquiri, and it was Boxing Day or the 24th of December. And Scott rang me. He's like, "Oh, hey man, I want to turn this into a T-shirt and donate the profit." And I was like, "Cool, man, no problems." He's like, "Can you help me out?" I was like, "I can help you out, but I can't cover the cost of the T-shirt." And he's like, "No worries." Anyway, it went up. The next day, he's like, "Oh, we've done 700 pre-sales." I was like, "Yeah, we can handle that. That's fine." And then he's like, "Is that 1,000?" I was like, "Okay, that's a lot, And then it got to the point where it was 2,500 tees. And I was like, "Holy shit, I'm screwed." And proper, because obviously we were coming back and we were only on, one of my guys was going to be away, and Matt, he was going to be there, and we just we had no chance. And fortunately, Pam, who owns T1, she rang me up. She's like, "How are you going?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm feeling a bit of pressure." And my wife, Shaq's like, "You've got to tell him you can't do any more." I'm like, "I can't tell him that. I can't tell him we can't do any more." And that's when, Pam, amazingly, she donated all of the printing. Ended up being 2,500 tees. And she donated all of the printing. It raised over $100,000, and Scott donated all of that money to different district fire, like bushfire stations. It was fantastic, and had heaps of coverage.
Awesome.
And yeah, it was such a cool project to be part of. But yeah, if Pam hadn't have come on board, I was writing a list of all of the different print shops I was going to hit up. And I remember there was this one shop, he comes like, oh, good luck printing that by hand. I was like, dude, you're on my list. So like, I'm going to hit you up.
So how many days would it take you to print that order?
Well, it was a process print. So we kind of work on an average of 100 an hour, which is black ink on white.
100 an hour on each press?
That's black ink on white on a single color. So I don't know, a couple of weeks. They then were folded and bagged, and then Scott did the shipping, and he shipped them all around the world. So yeah, as I said, he made over $100,000, like donated over $100,000 for it. And then he did a second print, which was another 1,000 tees. So yeah, it was amazing. It was an amazing thing to be part of. But yeah, it's kind of that power of the print shop. It's just like people want to wear it on a T-shirt. And I love it.
It wasn't at all similar as far as like that many tees, but we had something once where I think it was a couple hundred tees, and it was like end of the day, and we had to get them done by like the next day. And we had the manual where we could actually do all heads down. So we had, I think we had 4 or 5 guys on one manual, just going. Like one guy would load, the next guy would pull the screen down and print. The next guy would like, flash or whatever. And then the next one would like print the next color. And we had to like all be in sync so that like when they spun, it was like actually ready. So like each guy had to pull the screen out at the same time and print and then pick it up. But it definitely was way faster. But it's just when you get to that point, it's like, I think that literally like that was the point where we were like, fuck, like we have to get an auto at this point because this is stupid. Like we have like 4 people on one fucking manual printing this job, and it was kind of like, all right, we got to do this leap.
I have a story that's kind of like that. There was a fire, but it was at a hospital, and it was the largest hospital here in St. Louis, and everybody like did a great job. They evacuated and all this kind of stuff. So the CEO or the president of the hospital says, I want to get a T-shirt for everybody. And I think it was around 3,000, and they wanted it the next day. And it was on a manual press. And we had, back then when I was in my garage. And so we got the shirts, and it was late afternoon. And I went and I knocked on my neighbor's door, and I'm like, hey, can you help me like print all night long this thing? Cause they need them in the morning. And he's like, okay. And so we just went at it. And it was around like, all of a sudden it started getting light out, and we had, I don't know, maybe a few hundred left to go. And we just couldn't do any more. So we just literally just collapsed, like we just laid down on the ground there and just slept for like an hour or whatever, woke up, finished them. And I still have that screen. It's a wooden, back then I was using wooden screens.
Oh, wow.
I still have, and it was tiny. Like it wasn't an auto screen. It's like, I don't know, 18 by 20 or something like that. And so,
Did you have an oven? You had an oven but to push them through, right?
We did. I had a 24 wide, 11 foot long. It was made by National. I think they were out of Kansas or something like that. And all it was though, that dryer was like 3 flashes in a row.
Cool.
On a,
I think that's what the ones like the mini blue ones are. I think that's actually
the Radicator or the
3 IR panels in a row.
Yeah.
It worked. It was great. I remember the day I got that, I was curing, before I got that 2411, I was curing shirts with my flash, and so my pallets were like 1,000,000 degrees. I could never cool them down, and it was so slow. And so all of a sudden I got this dryer, and I started sending shirts down, and I went to the other end, and I just couldn't. It was like magic. I would hold up the shirts, and I just couldn't, or they can drop in a box. It was just like the best. So
I used to load, I used to pretend that I had an oven. I'd be like, oh, so I'd take the shirt off and I'd just do that step, that sort of step motion. I'd be like, oh, that's what that feels like. And the first oven I bought, I know it's so stupid. Hey, the first oven I bought here, I bought on eBay for $3,000, and it was in Melbourne. And I had to get it shipped up, and I was so excited. I ended up storing it in 2 different places until I could bring it into here. And I finally got it in here, and I had this big job all lined up to do, and I plugged it in and I turned it on, and the belt just ripped. And I was just like, oh, shit, I can't do the job. And then what I realized once I got the belt fixed was that the thermostat was ceramic elements, or anyway, the thermostat was too high, so I just burnt so many shirts, and we used to keep the place warm. It was so badly insulated that you could put your frozen food on it in the morning and it would be defrosted in time for lunch to put in the microwave. It kept us nice and warm. It's now a desk. The guy that I bought the equipment off, he now took the top off and uses it as a workbench.
That first oven I had exhausted into my garage. Like not
I didn't even have an exhaust out.
It's just exhausted into the garage.
We did that too.
Literally.
We did that too.
Yeah, I'm still alive somehow.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
The best part is when the room is so full of like smoke and you duck down and you can actually see the dividing of like clean, fresh air to like smoke rising.
Yeah, with that oven, we used to have, because sometimes it would cut out. So we had like this long hook so we could pull the shirts out in case they caught on fire. And we also, when the plastisol gets too hot and it sticks together, we had we had so many of those. It was so bad. I have no issues with that oven going.
Yeah.
There's some listener questions.
Oh, really? Great.
Yeah. We got a few, Dylan. You want to?
You go ahead.
Well, the first one is from Windmill City Screen Printing, who I actually almost visited once, but I was in Palm Springs earlier this year. Oh, cool. And they had a tent or a booth set up, and every Thursday in Palm Springs there's a festival, and so those guys were there. And they ask, I assume it gets hot in Australia. How do you keep the shop cool enough for printing?
We don't. We've got two fans. We have a thermostat that sits in the next to where Matt prints, and if it gets to 40, they stop, basically, which is 104, 103. We've got a couple of like portable fans that sort of one's on the floor and then one sits down. But we've got this big shutter that we can open and a back door, which is kind of like a loading dock. So that's kind of where it is. And
what season is it? Right now, what season is it for you?
Spring. So, so in my office now it's 24 degrees. I don't know what that is, but today it's going to be 31. So, which means it's going to be about 36 in there. So probably about 90 Fahrenheit. But the goal is to have a temperature controlled, the next space, the next warehouse or whatever it looks like, is to have a temperature controlled space, so we can air conditioning. I don't know. I don't want them to get too comfortable. But.
So do you start in the early in the mornings and then knock off? At 2 or 3 or whatever when it gets. We
start at 7:30 and we finish at 4. So that kind of gives us that early morning start, and then the way we work from Monday to Thursday, it's 7:30 to 4, and then we work under an employment award, which is 38 hours. So on Fridays they have a short day, so they can go and do their banking or go to the dentist or whatever it is, and that's kind of how it works. And then anything over that's overtime. But we just try and there's a water fountain, and I buy icy poles, or just when it gets really hot, I'm just like, just stop. I don't mind. We have extra breaks and stuff like that. So but it gets really hot, and that's the whole thing with Plastisol. We can't print with water-based when it gets too hot. When we print posters with water-based ink, and it's kind of like, what's the temperature going to be tomorrow? So yeah.
Well, the second question comes from Simple Cusack, and he asks, will Aisle 6 ever reprint the green shop tees with the orange print on them?
The green shop. Oh yeah, sure, we can do that. That's artwork that Joel made, and it's the van out the front, and that's a discharge orange on green. We only the whole reason you do shop shirts is so you guys have stuff to wear, essentially. That's kind of, we can do it. Should we do a pre-order?
Yeah. You use online stores of some sort, I guess?
We use Printavo. That's our main thing. But I have a couple of problems with that, in that we don't have access to all of it. So we don't have access to the merch app, which when all of the COVID hit, I was like, I need that. I want it so desperately. Because
it's extra. It's like an extra fee or something.
Yeah,
monthly?
it's an extra fee, but with that merch, it's got a plug-in for courier. So they're basically, their line on that is we don't have a courier company in Australia that we can plug it into. So I was like going to VPN it and go around the back, but every time they ask me for feedback, that's at the top of my list. But yeah, predominantly it's Printavo. That's what we use for all that sort of stuff. Our website's Squarespace, but I'm actually, because I can't get access to the merch part of Printavo, I'm in the process of switching over to Shopify, because there's so much more functionality for that. And that'll give me access to making the shops for everyone. With the online store we have is kind of like, we'll print something, we'll put it up for maybe a little while, and then we just make it sold out. I don't really like selling stuff that's the shops. I kind of would much rather give you something. And if you come into the store, it's very rare for you to not leave here without at least a sticker or a T-shirt or a hat. And I actually tried to buy some of your merch, Dylan, but you don't have a web shop. And I kind of if I can give you something and you can wear it, I'd much rather you represent me. You give
me your address when this is over, and you'll get a fucking shitload of stuff.
Sounds great.
Same here.
Yeah. For me, the shop shirt is kind of we've got one coming up with this guy called Splegs, and it's going to be amazing. But that's kind of what they all are. They're collaborations. The artists I like. We just did, the last one was with a guy called Steve Yoyeda. He's fantastic, and you probably won't like it, but it's the concept behind it. It's a cyclops, and he's got this pack of wolves, and he's got his big sword, and he hunts screen printers that use autos at night, and he chops their hands off, and he wears them around his neck. That's and he feeds the body
amazing.
to the wolves.
Why wouldn't we like that?
Oh, I don't know. But that was kind of the concept of that, and so we sort of just always try and, another great one is this amazing artist called Plano, who we absolutely love printing his artwork. And that one's a bat sitting on a skull and it's eating its brain. And, we sort of, I don't know. The online store thing is, I also don't like competing against our clients. Not that we would ever be in that same market, but I'm kind of I don't want to be that thing, and we never also have time, and we're always printing for people.
So you talked about things coming back full circle. And for me anyway, when I retire, which is really soon, I'm going to walk away from this, and we're going to go somewhere, probably by an ocean somewhere. And I'm going to get a manual and that's it. And I'm going to print wherever we are, whatever resort town we're at. It's going to be one color. It's just going to say the name of the resort town. And then boom. And it'll be, as people walk by and they see that, they'll see me in the store. And they'll have all their different choices or whatever you want. And I'll just have maybe do they make 10 color manuals or whatever, 12 color? So I'll have all those screens up on there, and they can choose, and I'll just spin it around or whatever one they want. Boom. 20.
So you'll live print.
You're going to be that guy. You're going to be that guy on the beach peddling stuff.
Yeah. That's how Casper, that's how Cotton Factory started, right? With that pedal bike.
It's funny. This isn't really related, but my brother-in-law went to Spain, and he said that him and his wife were on the beach, and there was this guy that came up that was being all from Spain or whatever. He's like, "Oh, you guys want cervezas, Coca-Cola?" He's acting like he was on the beach and stuff. And then he came up closer. He's like, "You guys want some weed?" It was his total accent was 100% fake, because he was just trying to sell to people. It was just funny because he just, as soon as he mentioned weed, he was totally "Hey, you guys want some weed?"
I'll also sell weed too out of that store. Right. So it'll work out.
That was a given. We knew that before you said that.
Yeah. Well, it's not, weed's not quite legal here. I mean, it's in Canberra, which is the capital. It's legal, but in New South Wales or Sydney, where we are, it's not. So
yeah, I mean, we're working on it too. I feel like a lot of states are getting it.
Yeah. But Australia's traditionally crap with shit like that. We will, we've got the brightest sun. We're in the process of putting in more coal stations for power, and we can't do anything really very productively. Even they put they basically put internet everywhere in Australia, and the technology they used was 10 years ago. So they're basically going to have to start all over again. So it's pretty amazing how hard it is to do stuff here.
Yeah, it's the same here, so you're not alone.
Yeah. So what's the state, Andy? Is it Florida? Is that where you're going to be?
Well, I don't know. I'm thinking the Southwest now. I just fell in love with it.
What's that? Sorry.
Arizona, New Mexico, Arizona.
Oh, cool.
Like that. What are you doing, Dylan?
Yeah.
Nothing.
You screwing in a light bulb, maybe?
I was screwing in the lid to my water bottle.
Oh, no. We went to ThreadX, and we went to Phoenix, and we went to Sedona and all that down there. So I know that's not by an ocean, but we love that. And also I love Colorado and Florida. Yeah, too. I'll do Florida. I don't know about in the summer though. So we'll have to go somewhere else. We'll go to upstate New York in the summer where it's more chill.
75, 80 degrees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm currently working subtly on my wife so that we can get to the point where we can rent a camper van and drive from one side of the States to the other. That's kind of like my ultimate family goal.
I want to do that too.
I don't know when it'll
I feel like
happen.
everybody does. Everybody wants to do that at some point.
I just talked this morning to somebody about that.
Yeah, we're going to do practice runs in New Zealand, which is kind of Australia's biggest. Actually, I can't say that. I won't say that. But yeah, that's it's very close, similar in style to what Australia is over here, but way cooler. Like their prime minister's way nicer, and people are generally friendlier. So
we'll make one of your stops St. Louis.
Sure. Yeah.
Come by and we'll have a beer.
Yes.
I have a buddy who has a shop in Australia, Black Dog Inc. And
I watched your podcast with him.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I asked him that I want to ask you is that like here in the States, anytime they make world's most deadliest or dangerous creatures, they're all from fucking Australia. Mm-hmm. Do you have any instances where you came in contact with one of these crazy creatures? Giant spiders or fucking snakes or anything crazy?
Oh, definitely huntsmen. They don't do anything. My wife, Shaq, she doesn't like spiders at all. I've got this thing, I bought it from the States. It's a bug catcher, and you kind of hold the handle and it opens up and you can put it over the spider and then you can pick it up. That's kind of as close as it's got to us. But there's so many bad animals over here that can hurt you, especially up north in Queensland, which is, that's kind of where we're going to retire to, I think. But up there on a farm.
Catching them.
Yeah, there's heaps, but I got some of my best friends, they live in Collingwood in Canada. And every time I talk to them, Sharon's like, we're not coming. It's so dangerous. I'm like, we're living in a city, Shazza. Like, it's not, they're not going to get you.
Why Queensland? Why do you want to retire there?
It is definitely, it's warmer. And where we would aim to be is kind of like, it's called the hinterland, Byron Bay. And it's kind of like lots of rainforest, and it's got really nice beaches, and it's, it's really chill. It's kind of a bit hippie-ish. I want to learn to surf, but I'm not very good at swimming, so I think I need to work on that. But we also, some of our best friends live up there, so that would be why we'd head up there. But that's not going to happen in the immediate future. I always kind of kick myself, and I think I own my own business and employ people, and we print some of the stuff we print for, and so I'm not sure how I would ever give it up, to be honest. That's kind of like my first child. Yeah,
that's my fear, is to sell it and then go retire and then be a year in, and then miss the action. I mean, because it's nonstop action, and so it's never boring. So
no, it's the most I've ever worked, like I don't ever, even now with COVID, I don't work so much in the shop because I've kind of committed to, I really realized that I need to spend more time at home with my family sort of. And so that's actually been a really beautiful thing that's come off the back of it. But I'm working more at night once my kids go to sleep. But it's so much work. It's so
you
much
go back.
work.
You go back to the shop. You mean you live close to the shop, and so you'll go back?
So I work like a couple of full days and then a couple of half days. But once my children go to bed about 7 p.m., I log back on, and that's when I sort of am my most productive. So I do like sort of every night, 5 or 6 hours of sort of admin or email or, that sort of stuff to try and keep the momentum going. And it's kind of, there's always noise in here, or there's always music or something going on. So at night at home in my little office, I just don't listen to anything, or it might be like a podcast that you guys have done or something like that. And
because our voices are so soothing.
Yeah, very, very calm. Actually, it was funny because I was starting to listen to this on Spotify, and I was like, I feel like they're actually having a conversation that I could watch. And then when I watch it on YouTube, I don't get anything done.
We've had this debate. We've had this debate where it's like, do we do videos and all this other stuff? And I told him, I was like, dude, I have people who hit me up that are like, I only listen to it or I only watch it. It's not like back and forth. So there's definitely those people who only watch it. And it's like, we have to keep doing it for those people. Like, I don't want to fuck those people over and just not make a video once. And they're just like, well, now I can't see it because I don't want to listen to it.
Yeah. So. I like watching it, but I just have to if I'm going to watch it, I actually have to just watch it. I can't do both things. So
yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah. There's two things I want to ask you before we're done. One, we have to ask the Inksoft question. The Inksoft sponsor question is, do you push or pull and why?
We pull, and we only pull here because, I pull, the guys pull, but sometimes they push, and that's just for the registration. That's the skill set. And when I started the shop, I essentially, if I couldn't do it at the level I wanted to do it, I tried my best to find the best possible people to do it, and that's where when Matt started here, he changed the whole business. The first day we were printing hoodies, and he's like, "Do you guys have any hot tack?" As I was like, super strong sort of spray glue. And I was like, hot tack? What's hot tack? And then every day for like so many days, Matt's like, oh, have you got this? Do you have this? Because he's come from a big shop. And I was like, what are you talking about, dude? And, Matt, he's my LeBron James. If I was to give him, that's his impact was immediate, and our quality just changed in a massive way. And then, Joel, our art director, we have the same barber. And Tommy was like, oh, I've got this guy. And he was like doing some artwork for us. And I was like, who's this guy you're talking about? And it turned out that Joel was the head art guy for this massive sort of merch shop. And I was like, Joel, can you please come and work for us? And, and then we got Ben, who had worked in the same shop as Matt. And, they're all just changed the whole.
You're basically just stealing people.
Yeah, well, no.
Hey, I'm guilty. I've done that a little bit of that too.
I wouldn't say I stole them, but it's a great place to work. We have a coffee machine.
That's all you need.
Yeah. No, but I just, I remember there was a time when I was like, oh, I'm not actually doing any printing, and I love printing. I love the starting out with something and then looking on the other side, and that's something you finished. And I love it when I see something that someone's wearing and they're walking down the street, because they've made that conscious decision. They love the print.
Yeah. That's like the ultimate for any printer. That's the ultimate. Or seeing it in a store.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the ultimate pat on the back.
Yeah. So you have two printers, one designer, right?
Yep.
Yourself and who else? How many people?
We've got Jacob, who's kind of our, he's our screen tech production manager.
Like Reclaim also?
We have another guy, Ben too. He does a bit of Reclaim. So he works a couple of days a week. But it was, when I got those guys, the whole business changed. We're able to do multiple things, and because we also print posters, which full disclosure, we use a semi-auto clamshell for that. It's about 40 years old. That's an exclusive, by the way. No one knows we do that, but that's how we're doing posters. So I can see the value in using a semi-auto because it's so much better. But Jacob's been with us for over a year now, and he's sort of moving from being the screen sort of production person. He's learning how to use the CS machine with the view to him taking that on, and that becomes his job. So
my next question is, and I've been trying to do this in every podcast because I feel like so many people hit us up in our DMs about things they heard in the podcast that was kind of like a little tip or a trick that's just like something that's like super, like each printer has their own like way they did something that's not like by the book. Do you have anything that's like that where like you use a certain product or you found this out and you're like, this is a keeper?
I think an aha moment for me was when I realized that if you, and this is so simple, but you draw a center line down your platen and you have the center line in your artwork, and that's how you get the artwork centered when you're printing. And that's kind of like fundamental screen printing. Yeah. That's something that came back from PhotoFit. And I was just like, holy shit, that's so simple. So simple. Because, you'd be measuring each side of the board. I don't know. Does that answer your question? Because for me, that's kind of
that's one. Yeah, I just didn't know if you had anything.
Yeah, that's one. I used to do the similar thing, like before that anyway, is I would print my first. Let's say there was a 4-color job, and then black was one of your colors. I'd print out black on the palette, and then line the 3 screens to that print.
Oh yeah.
I didn't use reg marks initially when I first started. I didn't even know what they were. So I would just print the darkest print and then take the other screens and line them to that.
Yeah. I used to do that as well, but Matt, he was like, no, that's not how you do it. Matt's irrespective of what the job is, every time he starts exactly the same way, and the result is, his results show them like they're good. He's good at what he does.
In respects to kind of what you were saying, one thing that we did when we first started out was we were always doing registration marks, but we were just doing 2 at the top. And then obviously like the first color would have center lines. But what we started doing maybe a couple of years in when we were still using film is we would do 2 at the top and then 1 on the bottom right. So that like, even though you line the 2 on the top up, like the film might be slightly warped or something on the bottom. Cause you would always have that issue of like it being slightly out of registration on the bottom only or something. You'd be like, what the fuck? But adding that 3rd registration mark on the bottom on the one side was just kind of like that double check yourself to make sure that like the whole image is going to be in and not just like the top. Why
would it be on one side and just not the center?
I don't know. We've always just done them in the top corners instead of in the center. I think it's just the same thing. Cause like film has a tendency to warp, especially if your film guy's just printing like a bunch of films, like one right after another. Or if you're that shop that tries to gang a bunch of films up on one roll rather than like, this design, cut it, print it, whatever. I was guilty of that when I was doing them is I would be like, oh, I've got a bunch of little designs. I'll do like a 30-inch print on the roll. And I would just like put them where I could put them to save film. But the problem is you end up, the film ends up warping once you get like a certain amount out. Cause like the weight of the film's kind of like stretching or pulling. So we noticed
if it's multiple color, the artwork, like the 2 artworks have to be in the same direction because of the print head.
So that right there is it. Yeah.
Yeah. If I had a choice, I would totally this whole automating the shop. I'd absolutely get the direct to screen and the Unicoat. That would be like straight away. Those would be the 2 things. But we also make screens for a couple of gold glass sign writers and sign painters here. And sometimes our vacuum frame is probably 1.5 meters long. So we actually we have screens that are huge. Even if we were to move that part of the business to direct to screen, I'd still need to keep the vacuum frame and the film printer because that's what we do as a service. So
yeah, like especially when you go direct to screen, like there's a thing called a pusher frame. So you need a pusher frame for each screen size you have.
Oh, okay.
So
is that what it sits in?
Yeah, so it sits in like that pusher frame or whatever. So if you're using 2024s, 2336 or 2331s and then 2536s, you need 3 pusher frames for all of those screens.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So if you have, big screens for sign printers and all this other stuff, you're going to have to do it the old way. Unless you buy a pusher frame.
The vacuum frame and the spray. Spray glue.
Yeah. A blanket vacuum bag.
Yeah, well, ours is huge. It's so big. I got it off this dude. He was like, I don't want this anymore. I was like, I'll come and get it off you.
Yeah.
One cool thing about this new 3140 LED is that it has the option for both. So there's came with vacuum, has 2 clips here, if you wanted to use film with glass, right? And so you come down, so you put your film down and then close the lid. And if you want, if you don't want to use the vacuum or glass, which we don't, you just they stay clipped, and then there's a center clip, and it just opens up, and then there's the tray. There's actually 2 trays, so you can expose 2 at once.
That's crazy. And so what do you do with your spare equipment, Andy? Do they take it back off you, or do you just put it on Craigslist? Is that how it works?
Well, I don't have, right now we don't have any spare equipment. Or like, so when we sold the heat waves, we just sold them. Yeah. Like when we went to the Sprint.
Yeah.
You're talking about your exposure unit.
Oh yeah. Exposure unit. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to keep the Starlight or keep, the 3140. Haven't decided yet. They're close. I think right now the 3140's edging out the Starlight. It's pretty close though.
A bit more flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those new features.
Some new features that also has the latitude we're looking for. It exposes slower. So we were at around 4 seconds on our Starlight, which doesn't even make sense. And our step test showed us yesterday that we're at 22 on the same emulsion, same EOM, same everything. 22 seconds on the 3140, which is awesome. That we'll be able to control things a little better.
Yeah, I think we're at about 5.5 minutes.
Because you're using the sun.
What's your light sort? What are you using? What's your light?
It's this 2000 watt. The things that open up. I don't even know. It's like a
shutter. It's always on. It's always on.
It's always on, and then you open it up, and it's got the heat on the glass.
What kind is it? A blue light though, like a metal halide?
A blue light. Yeah, metal halide. So we've got the welding curtains to stop the UV light, sort of giving everyone free suntans. And but we don't have any safety lights or anything. I've never had that space. So when I move to the next shop, I've kind of got this wish list of the ultimate sort of stuff to sort of help us sort of. Just be better, The new, the space you're talking about in August with your potential move, which is 9 months or whatever that is, almost a year. There's no lease or anything yet, right? You haven't signed a lease. Nope. Haven't even got the spot. So
okay, because obviously that's all dependent on, and that would hinge on what happens with your country, right? With regards to COVID, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, where we are in New South Wales, we kind of floating on a second wave. They have pockets. Victoria, where Melbourne is, they're still in lockdown. They've been in lockdown for 10 weeks because of the second wave. We kind of, you wouldn't even really know. People wear masks when they go shopping and out in public. But it really depends on what happens. I'm kind of there's the part of me that you could be like, oh, we don't do it and we just stay here and we just keep going. But, from being able to take on more work and even grow and even consider putting in an auto, it just won't work where we are. It's not practical. We probably should have moved 3 years ago. However, I had 3 years ago, I had my daughter. The year in the middle, couldn't manage it. The year after, had my son. So it's kind of all these things happen. And then COVID hit. We nearly moved this year in January. I found this amazing space. It was way more money than we were paying. But I hadn't really ever, my budget was a bit loose. So I actually went back and tried to figure out how much it was going to cost. And there was no way I could have afforded it and still kept operating. And then in hindsight, COVID hit. So it kind of helped. It sort of saved me from having to sort of be exposed at that level, which is kind of, and not really wanting to take on debt. I really have an aversion to it, but I kind of know that to move, I'm kind of probably going to have to. So, it's just committing
cautiously.
Yeah, cautious.
I would imagine it's when you do next summer sign a lease, it's going to be a leaser's market. I mean, you'll probably get a really nice deal. I would sign a long one.
Yeah. That's kind of, definitely in my favor is that, hopefully I can get it cheaper and go for longer. I want at least a 5-year lease. That's kind of what I'm aiming for. I've never moved a print shop except for the first time I moved in here, and everything fit in a van. So the idea of having to move what we have compared to, it scares me.
Yeah. Doesn't sound like fun at all.
No.
Well, hey man, we appreciate you doing this with us.
I'm so happy to have been able to talk to you guys. I'm a big fan. What you guys are doing is such a good thing. So
Hey, thank you. Well, especially because you're in the future right now. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was going to ask you what's for dinner, but I should ask you what's for breakfast.
Breakfast was actually toast because I had to, my son had his first day of preschool today, so I was sort of running around. Dinner is spaghetti bolognese, which we happen to have maybe 3 times a week because that's all they eat. So
what do you put on your toast?
Oh, I had Vegemite. Actually, I'll send you guys some Vegemite. It's like it's yeast extract. It's you either love it or you hate it.
Save your fucking postage.
Yeah, it's very Australian Vegemite. It's an acquired taste, but it's kind of that thing that if you just some days you just want to eat it, and that's what it is. So it was.
What do you put on your toast up there in New York, Dylan?
Fucking butter, like a normal human being.
Nothing else, just straight butter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And salt, probably.
No, salted butter.
Yeah.
Fucking, what'd you say it was? Yeast?
It's a yeast extract.
All right. Yeah. I don't want to knock your toast. I feel bad if you like it, but to me, it does not sound great.
Our friends Katoen Fabriek in Holland sent us what they put on toast, and it's called mice poop. Or something like that, or mouse poop, and it's like these little these sprinkles of chocolate, and it looks like mice turd, and they just sprinkle all over the toast. And they give us this whole thing. It was really good though. Yeah. But that's the name they came up with. So,
well, I didn't name Vegemite. It's not like, but it's been around forever. That's
your
like
fault.
I've heard of it before, but I didn't know what it was. All right, dude. Well, have a good morning.
Yeah, thanks so much. And,
I'm gonna go home, go to bed now.
Go home and have some Vegemite.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
See you, Shannon.